The mafia world is a dangerous mix of power, greed, and violence, and New York's underworld is no different. From stories of bosses who worked in the shadows killing hundreds in cold blood, to leaders who operated mafia businesses even from prison, this video unveils a list of the deadliest mafia bosses who are currently still active in New York. So buckle up and let's dive in. Domenico Cefalu. Domenico Cefalu is a known mafia boss who preferred to operate in the shadows, so his influence could be felt rather than seen. Born in Sicily, the birthplace of the Cosa Nostra, Cefalu quickly became famous because of his discretion and loyalty, eventually taking up the role of acting boss, a position that placed him at the helm of one of New York's most powerful criminal organizations. As boss, Cefalu oversaw a vast criminal empire, involved in everything from racketeering and loan sharking to drug trafficking and extortion. But unlike his predecessors, who often sought media attention, Cefalu was a man of old-school values. He adhered strictly to the mafia's code of silence and its traditional rules, and this low-profile approach allowed him to operate more discreetly, avoiding the intense scrutiny of law enforcement. Although Cefalu's reign was challenged by both law enforcement and internal strife, all these made him even stronger, allowing the deadly mafia boss commit several atrocities. Another mafia boss who maintained such power headed the Gambino crime family in the 1990s. Lorenzo Mannino. The life of Lorenzo Mannino is one that is deeply intertwined with the mafia's traditions of violence, secrecy, and unwavering loyalty. In fact, one of his most notorious alleged crimes was his involvement in the 1990 assassination of Francesco Scaglione, an act that further portrayed his cruelty and brutality. Despite his deep involvement in organized crime, Mannino managed to avoid significant legal troubles for much of his career, and this is partly due to his low profile. He adhered to the old-school mafia principle of keeping out of the spotlight, which in turn allowed him to evade law enforcement's gaze for many years. There have even been reports suggesting that Mannino has taken on even more significant leadership role within the Gambino family. Yet, not much is known about this. Given the decimation of traditional mafia structures due to relentless federal investigations, it's said that Mannino's old-school, low-key approach may be a key reason why he's remained effective in the ever-evolving world of organized crime. While Mannino's influence in the mafian world was so significant, there was one other who came close. Matthew Madonna. Unlike many mobsters born into the criminal underworld, Matthew Madonna's rise to power was a testament to his cunning and unwavering determination. Starting as a heroin dealer in the Bronx, Madonna quickly established himself as a force to be reckoned with, especially after his success in the drug trade caught the attention of the Lucchese family. He was eventually inducted as a member and soon became the acting boss of the family. As boss, Madonna oversaw a vast criminal empire involved in extortion, loan sharking, gambling, and even murder. One of the most notorious crimes during his tenure was the 2013 murder of Michael Meldish, a former associate who had fallen out of favor. This brutal act sent a clear message to anyone who dared to defy the Lucchese family's authority. However, Madonna's reign faced a lot of challenges with law enforcement. Even internal struggles within the family threatened to undermine his control. He ultimately ran out of luck and was arrested in 2017 on charges of racketeering, conspiracy, and murder. He was also convicted and sentenced to life in prison after a lengthy trial. While Madonna's downfall marked the end of a long and violent criminal career, it's said that he still has control over the crime gang, even though he's currently behind bars. One other mafia boss who had a similar story is yet another member of the Lucchese crime family. Joseph DiNapoli. Joseph DiNapoli is a prominent member of the Lucchese crime family, one of the 5 families that dominate the mafia landscape. DiNapoli's life is one known for illicit activity and calculated ruthlessness. Born in 1935, DiNapoli's rise through the ranks of the Lucchese family was gradual but steady. Although his involvement in criminal activities began at a young age, he quickly proved himself to be a reliable and capable member, eventually becoming one of the family's 3-member ruling panel. DiNapoli's criminal empire is vast, involving a series of criminal activities including loan sharking, illegal gambling, extortion, and labor racketeering. His particular influence in labor unions and construction has also allowed him to extort money and manipulate contracts, siphoning millions of dollars from businesses and workers. In 2009, DiNapoli's criminal career faced a major setback after he was indicted on charges of extortion, racketeering, and money laundering. The charges highlighted the Lucchese family's stranglehold on businesses, and DiNapoli's role as a key player in these operations was emphasized, leading to his conviction. However, despite that setback, DiNapoli has continued his legacy as a seasoned and calculating leader in organized crime and remains a strong power of the mafia in America's criminal underworld, just like another brutal leader of the Lucchese crime family. Victor Amuso. Victor Amuso is the ruthless leader of the Lucchese crime family, known for a reign marked by bloodshed and betrayal. From the 1980s through the early 1990s, Amuso ruled the family fearfully, earning a reputation as one of the most feared mob bosses in American history. In fact, his reign is considered one of the bloodiest periods in American mafia history. Amuso was drawn into the world of crime at a young age, rising quickly through the ranks of the Lucchese family and eventually becoming the boss. He and his close associate, Anthony Pipe Casso, unleashed a reign of terror that led to some of the most violent periods in mafia history. Under Amuso's leadership, the Lucchese family became deeply involved in a variety of criminal enterprises, including drug trafficking, extortion, and labor racketeering. His rule was also defined by extreme paranoia. One of the most infamous examples of Amuso's bloodthirsty leadership was his involvement in the Whack Jersey plot, a plot in which he ordered the murder of the entire New Jersey faction of the Lucchese family. Although this extreme plan was never fully executed, it exemplified Amuso's willingness to annihilate entire segments of his organization just to maintain control. In 1991, Amuso was captured by the FBI, and his trial was a media spectacle. His capture was said to have marked a turning point for the Lucchese family, which had already begun to fracture under the weight of his paranoia and Casso's betrayals. However, it didn't put an end to Amuso's reign, because despite being sentenced to life in prison in 1992, Amuso continues to exert influence over the Lucchese family. While Amuso's impact on the history of the American mafia is undeniable, another leader also wreaked havoc in New York, making him one of the most feared mafia bosses of his time. Carmine Avellino. Carmine Avellino is one of the renowned names in the world of New York City's organized crime. While he operated mostly behind the scenes, his influence was substantial as he managed operations that ranged from loan sharking to racketeering. As a capo of his crime family, Avellino controlled crews involved in various illegal enterprises. His most prominent venture is loan sharking, a business that involved lending money at exorbitant interest rates and using threats or violence to ensure repayment. Avellino is known for being ruthless in his pursuit of repayment, targeting vulnerable individuals who were desperate for money. It's said that people who borrow from him face relentless pressure to pay, with penalties for late payments that could escalate into violence. Avellino is also known for extortion and labor racketeering. He exploited the construction and labor sectors, using the family's influence to demand bribes and control contract bidding processes. He was eventually arrested in 2014 and charged with extortion and conspiracy for his role in the loan sharking business. Although Avellino initially tried to avoid prison time, in 2016, he ultimately pled guilty to the charges, and his sentencing included both prison time and a hefty fine, marking a significant blow to his criminal career. It's worth noting that while Avellino faced justice in 2016, he still remains a prominent figure in the cartel activities and will probably remain so, just like this next Lucchese mafia boss. Anthony Barata. Anthony Barata is one other mafia boss who is respected as an old-school mobster. Known for his cold demeanor and ruthless efficiency, Barata has become a feared and respected figure within one of New York's most powerful syndicates. Born in 1938, Barata came of age during the golden era of New York's organized crime. He was drawn to the allure of power and wealth, followed the path of crime, and learned the ropes of mafia life. He eventually became the capo, or captain of his crime family, and was assigned to lead the Harlem Crew, which controlled the Pleasant Avenue narcotics ring in East Harlem and other rackets in the Bronx and Long Island. Barata has a reputation as a ruthless enforcer, and to be honest, this reputation was well-deserved, as he is known for his willingness to use violence to collect debts and maintain discipline within the family. His involvement in alleged murders further sealed his status as a feared figure in the underworld. Despite the risks, Barata's criminal activities yielded significant wealth and influence, and his involvement in loan sharking and gambling brought a steady stream of income to the crime family. Ultimately, as the family's power grew, so too did Barata's fame grow. Although a lot of people have risen to power after him, Anthony Barata still remains a force to be reckoned with in New York's crime world. Another person like him once ruled the Genovese crime family in the 1990s. John Capra. John Capra is a significant player in the underworld, particularly within the Genovese crime family. Unlike his more flamboyant counterparts, Capra preferred to operate in the shadows. His approach to crime was characterized by a calculated calm, as he avoided the spotlight, preferring to manage his operations discreetly. Yet his involvement in violent incidents, including suspected hits, reveals a darker side to his character. Like many mobsters, Capra understood that violence was often necessary to maintain power and enforce loyalty, and he used this to his advantage. Unfortunately, in the 1990s, the pressure from law enforcement on organized crime grew considerably, leading to Capra being indicted on charges ranging from racketeering to conspiracy. While John Capra still remains the quiet yet powerful figure who operated within the mafia underworld, his reign has been challenged by new figures in the crime family, and the same goes for other mafia bosses like the Bonanno crime family's leader. Vincent Badalamenti is a key figure within the Bonanno crime family and a product of the modern mafia. As a capo in the Bonanno family, Badalamenti oversaw a range of illicit activities ranging from extortion to loan sharking and even drug trafficking. These were his bread and butter. Badalamenti used fear and intimidation to extort money from businesses, exploited the desperate for profit, and participated in the lucrative but dangerous drug trade. In fact, despite the mafia's decline in power, Badalamenti's criminal career demonstrated its enduring resilience as he adapted to the changing times, engaging in new ventures while clinging to the traditional values of loyalty and secrecy. Even in an era of increased law enforcement scrutiny, Badalamenti's organized criminal activities continue to find ways to operate in the shadows. Although he was at some point arrested and convicted, Badalamenti's arrest did not stop the Bonanno family from continuing to survive. One other mafia boss who left such an unforgettable legacy is the capo in the Genovese crime popular called the Rooster. Eugene Onofrio. Eugene Onofrio, a capo in the Genovese crime family, is notorious for his old-school rackets and subtle approach to criminal enterprise. Onofrio's involvement in the Genovese family, one of the most disciplined and secretive of New York City's 5 families, showcased his ability to navigate the complex politics of the mafia, and as a leader he oversaw a crew involved in a variety of illicit activities, including loan sharking, extortion, and illegal gambling. Onofrio was particularly experienced at loan sharking, turning this into a reliable source of income for the mafia, even in a changing world. His operations also extended beyond New York City, reaching into Connecticut and Florida, and this geographical reach highlighted the mafia's ability to adapt to new opportunities and expand its influence. While the mafia's grip on power may have weakened, it remains a persistent force in the criminal underworld, and Onofrio stands as a prominent figure, just like this next mafia boss. Joseph DeSimone. Joseph DeSimone, although not as widely recognized as some of the more infamous mafia bosses, has a criminal career that's marked by his involvement in a range of illegal enterprises, including drug trafficking, extortion, and loan sharking. DeSimone's path to mafia leadership began in the streets of New York, where he started out as a low-level associate in the Gambino family. But his loyalty to the family and his ability to bring in money led to his gradual rise through the ranks. And by the time he climbed the Gambino hierarchy, DeSimone had already built a reputation for his ruthlessness and his skill in managing the family's various operations. He was responsible for overseeing a crew that engaged in numerous illegal activities. This crew would target local businesses, threatening violence or property damage if the owners did not pay protection money, and the fear that came with refusing to pay ensured that businesses complied, further reinforcing the mafia's grip on the local economy. Loan sharking is another significant aspect of DeSimone's criminal empire. He would provide high-interest loans to desperate individuals who had few options, and when the borrowers inevitably fell behind on their payments, they were subjected to harsh consequences, including threats, beatings, or worse. This predatory lending was a highly profitable enterprise for DeSimone, allowing him to keep a constant stream of revenue flowing into the Gambino family's coffers. One of the most defining features of DeSimone's leadership was his willingness to use violence to maintain order and ensure compliance within his ranks. Whether it was enforcing discipline among his crew, dealing with rivals, or sending a message to those who dared to challenge the mafia's authority, DeSimone's capacity for brutality was well known, and this readiness to resort to lethal force was a key factor in his rise to power and his ability to maintain it. One other mafia boss who used force to maintain power was the Bonanno crime boss popularly called the Nose. Michael Mancuso. As the boss of the Bonanno crime family, Michael Mancuso rose to power in an era when the mafia's influence was already waning, yet he managed to maintain control over one of New York's most infamous crime families. His path to power was far from smooth, as the Bonanno family was embroiled in scandals, particularly after the infamous defection of boss Joseph Massino, who became the first official head of a New York mafia family to turn state's evidence. In this volatile environment, Mancuso managed to rise through the ranks by demonstrating loyalty, ruthlessness, ruthlessness, and a keen ability to navigate the treacherous dynamics of organized crime. His reputation for violence was further solidified when he was involved in the 1984 killing of his then-girlfriend's husband, whom he gunned down in broad daylight, a crime which caused him to be convicted of manslaughter and serve nearly a decade behind bars. Before his arrest, Mancuso instilled fear and commanded respect through force, which was a critical aspect of maintaining control within the mafia. He was also more than willing to use violence when necessary. This ruthlessness continued even after his release, eventually leading him to become acting boss of the crime family. However, in 2004, Mancuso's time as boss was marred by further violence and betrayal after he ordered the murder of Bonanno Capo Randolph Pizzolo, a member who was perceived as a loose cannon and a potential threat to the stability of the family. Unfortunately, the killing drew the attention of law enforcement, leading to Mancuso's arrest and conviction for ordering the murder. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison in 2008, but despite his imprisonment, Mancuso retained influence over the Bonanno family. He continued to manage family affairs from prison, making key decisions and appointing acting leaders to run day-to-day operations. He was eventually released in 2019, and upon his release, Mancuso resumed his role as the head of the Bonanno family. Just like Mancuso was able to maintain power even behind bars, one other mafia boss was also able to maintain this authority even after his arrest and conviction. Liborio Bellomo. Rising from the gritty streets of the Bronx, Bellomo's ascent to power within the Genovese family is one that depicts mafia loyalty, cunning, and ruthlessness. Despite numerous encounters with the law and persistent efforts by law enforcement to dismantle the Genovese family's operations, Bellomo remains one of the most mysterious figures in organized crime, maintaining a position of influence even within the mafia's modern landscape. From a young age, Bellomo was drawn into the Genovese family's fold and quickly proved himself as a capable and loyal foot soldier. Under the guidance of seasoned mobsters, he learned the art of organized crime, extortion, loan sharking, racketeering, and the ability to stay in the shadows. And by the early 1990s, he had become the acting boss of the Genovese family. Bellomo's role as acting boss allowed him to exert significant influence over the family's operations while still adhering to the family's strategy of low visibility. He was responsible for overseeing a vast array of criminal enterprises and was also linked to more serious violent crimes like murder, some of which were believed to be ordered hits meant to protect the family's interests or eliminate rivals. Although direct evidence was often difficult to obtain, Bellomo's name frequently surfaced in law enforcement investigations into these killings, leading to his arrest in 1996 when he was convicted and charged with racketeering, extortion, and conspiracy to commit murder. However, after his release in the early 2000s, Bellomo was quickly reinstated as a powerful figure within the Genovese family. His ability to re-establish himself as a leader was shocking to many, as it demonstrated both his importance to the family and his skill in navigating the treacherous waters of mafia politics. Unlike many mafia bosses who lose their standing after arrest, Bellomo managed to retain the respect and loyalty of his peers. But not everyone gets this lucky. Nicholas Carrozzo. Nicholas was a prominent figure in the Gambino crime family, a key player in the world of organized crime, and someone whose influence was felt across New York's criminal underworld for decades. He is known for his cunning personality, charisma, and ruthlessness, features that helped him create a career as a mob boss of the Gambino family. What truly set Carrozzo apart from other mafia bosses was his involvement in more violent aspects of organized crime. He was willing to sanction or directly participate in murders to protect the family's interests or settle disputes. One of the most notorious incidents linked to Carrozzo was his involvement in the 1996 murder of a Queens drug dealer named Lucchese De Bono. De Bono, who had crossed the Gambino family, was found shot dead in a parking garage, with Carrozzo allegedly playing a central role in the decision to take him out. Ultimately, like many high-ranking mobsters, Carrozzo's criminal career was eventually derailed by law enforcement after he was arrested in 1997 and sentenced to 13 years in prison. Although he was later released in 2004, his freedom was short-lived, as he was swept up in another large-scale federal operation targeting organized crime in 2008, and this time he received another lengthy prison sentence, effectively ending his ability to lead the family's operations. Similar to Carrozzo, one other mafia boss also enjoyed a short-lived freedom after his arrest in 1993. Martin Tacchetta. Martin Taccetta is a brutal mafia boss known for his efficiency and a criminal sophistication that made him famous in the latter half of the 20th century. As the head of the New Jersey faction of the Lucchese family, Taccetta was instrumental in running various illegal enterprises that spanned from extortion and loan sharking to racketeering and murder. Interestingly, Martin Taccetta came from a family with strong mafia ties, and his brother Michael Taccetta was also a prominent member of the Lucchese family, so together they formed a powerful duo within the New Jersey faction. Unlike the stereotypical mobsters who thrived on notoriety, Martin Taccetta was more of a calculated and business-minded operator, although he was still ruthless. Perhaps the most notorious aspect of the mafia boss's criminal career was his involvement in racketeering, an act which formed the basis of the charges that eventually led to his arrest in 1993. The most infamous of these cases was the 1984 murder of Vincent Craparotta, a business owner who resisted the Lucchese family's demands. Craparotta's refusal to comply with Taccetta's extortion demands led to his brutal killing, and Taccetta was ultimately convicted of ordering this murder, a charge that carried significant weight in his eventual sentencing. He was sentenced to life in prison after being convicted on multiple charges, including racketeering, extortion, and murder. However, in a surprising turn of events, Taccetta's conviction was overturned in 2005, leading to his brief release. But this freedom was also short-lived, as his conviction was later reinstated in 2009, and he was returned to prison. Interestingly, while Taccetta still remains behind bars, he still maintains a strong standing in the Lucchese crime family, just like the brutal son of the notorious mafia leader Camerano Sr., Joseph Camerano Jr. Joseph Camerano Jr. is one other brutal mafia boss from the Bonanno crime family. He is the son of the notorious Joseph Camerano Sr., who was also a powerful capo, and therefore inherited both the legacy and the criminal mindset that has defined his role within the underworld. Born into a mafia family, Camerano Jr. was destined for a life in organized crime. He was deeply embedded in the mafia's traditions and values from an early age, groomed to understand the importance of loyalty, respect, and ruthlessness. As he matured, Camerano Jr. began taking on more responsibilities within the Bonanno family, eventually becoming a high-ranking member who held considerable influence, and by the mid-2010s he had risen to the position of acting boss, leading the family during a period marked by both internal strife and external pressure from law enforcement. One of the more notable aspects of Camerano Jr.'s career was his involvement in labor racketeering, because under his leadership, the Bonanno family continued to leverage these connections to extract profits from companies and workers alike. However, in 2018, the crime family was indicted on a variety of charges, including racketeering, extortion, and conspiracy. While the charges ended in a surprising twist after they were acquitted in 2019, the Bonanno family's power at that time had been significantly weakened by decades of legal pressures, informants, and societal changes. One other mafia boss who ended up like Camerano Jr. was Little Robert of the Colombo crime family. Robert D'Onofrio. Although not well known, Robert D'Onofrio is still a formidable figure in the world of organized crime. His entry into the mafia likely followed the well-trodden path of many mobsters before him, as he also grew up in an environment where the mafia's influence was strong and was drawn into a world that offered power, respect, and wealth. D'Onofrio's criminal activities spanned a range of traditional rackets, although he was more notorious for his involvement in illegal gambling. His ability to oversee his gambling operations without drawing too much attention to himself was particularly one of his key strengths, as he preferred to stay out of the spotlight, avoiding the flamboyance that often led to the downfall of more notorious mobsters. But of course, he was no stranger to violence. While D'Onofrio might not have been known as a particularly brutal enforcer, his involvement in ordering or facilitating hits on rivals and traitors was a necessary part of his role. In the mafia, maintaining control and ensuring loyalty often required extreme measures, and D'Onofrio understood this well. He was eventually indicted and convicted on multiple charges, including racketeering and conspiracy, leading to a significant prison sentence. Although D'Onofrio's prison sentence almost ended his criminal career, one other mafia boss was still able to maintain his career by keeping a low profile. John Palazzolo. John Palazzolo was a significant figure in the American mafia, particularly within the ranks of the Gambino crime family. Although he maintained a low public profile for much of his career, Palazzolo's influence within the family was substantial, and his criminal endeavors spanned the wide spectrum of mafia operations. Like many of his contemporaries, Palazzolo was deeply embedded in the underworld, participating in activities that ranged from traditional racketeering to more violent enterprises. A major part of his roles within the Gambino family was overseeing extortion rackets. Palazzolo specialized in targeting businesses, particularly those in the construction and waste management industries. He also did some illegal gambling and was believed to be connected to violent crimes, including murders ordered by the Gambino leadership. Despite his involvement in significant criminal enterprises, Palazzolo largely avoided the public eye. He preferred to operate quietly, maintaining a low profile that allowed him to conduct his business without drawing too much scrutiny. But while this strategy helped him avoid major legal troubles for much of his career, it didn't keep him from facing some of the consequences of his actions, just like this Italian-American mafia boss. John Spirito Sr. Born into a working-class Italian-American family, Spirito was drawn into the underworld at a rather young age, but rose through the ranks due to his reliability, strategic thinking, and ability to generate profits. His criminal activities were typical of a mafia figure of his stature: talk of extortion and illegal gambling. Spirito operated underground betting rings, ran numbers operations, and managed gambling dens, all of which generated significant revenue. While Spirito was not as publicly violent as some of his mafia counterparts, he was not averse to using force when necessary and was linked to several violent crimes, including suspected involvement in contract killings ordered by the family's leadership. Spirito's low-profile approach allowed him to thrive in the shadows, managing an empire that was both profitable and fearsome. However, it didn't keep him from the law. Although he still remains an active member of the crime family, he basically works behind the scenes now. Next up is Georgie Neck of the 1980s. George Zappola. Known for his ruthlessness and ambition, Zappola carved out a significant role for himself as one of the family's top enforcers and leaders. His criminal career, characterized by the violent and profit-driven nature of the mafia, was built on extortion, drug trafficking, and even murder. One of Zappola's key responsibilities was overseeing the family's drug operations. While the mafia traditionally avoided heavy involvement in narcotics due to the attention it attracted from law enforcement, by the 1980s, drug trafficking had become too profitable to resist, and Zappola headed the business for his family. Zappola's notoriety grew further due to his involvement in a series of high-profile murders. He was linked to multiple killings, including the 1992 murder of mobster Nicky Guido, who was mistakenly targeted in a revenge hit orchestrated by Zappola and other Lucchese members. Unfortunately, in 1993, Zappola was arrested and charged with racketeering, drug trafficking, and murder. Although not as prominent as before, he still remains an underground member of his crime family. What are your thoughts on this list of deadliest mafia bosses? Let me know in the comment section. And if you'd like to see more content like this, then be sure to click on this next video on your screen.